So it is a great segue. I'm going to piggyback on that. When I grew up, we didn't have social media. We practiced, played, spent time with our family and friends, and just repeated. I'm thankful that we didn't have cameras. I'm thankful that all that stuff wasn't recorded. But today, when I look at the pressures that student athletes face, social media is a predominant one. They can either be barraged or through their own curiosity become overwhelmed by comparison and competition. The sad thing is now you can go to ESPN and not only are there the top 10, there's the bottom 10. So now a college kid, sometimes by millions of viewers, is going to be shown on TV making a routine mistake that every college player has made. How do you teach student athletes to use social media the correct way and not the way that's going to damage their self-esteem?
I think at some point, if you're a successful college athlete, you got to think of it as a business. You got to think of it as a brand, and not as, when you're young and in high school. Yes, it's you, it's your social life, but at some point, I think that has to change, and it has to become more of a business and a brand, and less of a personal tie into to you as a person. I deal with it a lot too. With social media, and I have to not take it personally. I have to look at it as, look, I'm a brand, and I'm some character to a lot of people, and
Right.
they don't see me as a human being, and so you got to let it go. One thing advice that I got, which I think was super crucial to my just success on managing social media, is never get in an argument
Right.
with anyone that comments. Don't engage in an argument. You're never going to convince anyone to change their mind over back and forth tweets or comments on social media. It's not happening. So just don't engage in any negativity. I think the other thing, I'm a block and deleter. Look, these are not people that I know. And I think one thing college athletes have to remember is, you make that pass to score the touchdown in the national championship game, you're going to gain thousands of followers in about 5 minutes off of a behavior, off of an action that you did in a second that was good. You will lose those followers on the reverse of that. You make an action in a second that's not good, you will lose them. These are not people who know you, care about you, and are going to stick around through the end. Like, these are people who think they know you. It's not, you got to look at a like is a like, a follow is a follow. It's not a friend. It's not, and so block and delete. And,
Absolutely.
when someone comments something on my page that is inappropriate, that's just, racist or sexist, or, I block and delete. You get one shot. You get one shot to comment on my page. And if you screw it up, I will delete and I will block you. And because it all goes back to the quote that I said in the beginning. If you're not sitting in my shoes, I don't need your feedback, because you are unaware of what is actually happening in my life. And I think athletes really need to remember that. The 100,000 people wearing crimson and white in that stadium on Saturday, they don't know you. They're cheering you on because you have a number and a jersey that has Crimson Tide on it. Mm-hmm. That's it. You take that jersey off and you put another team name on it, and they hate your guts. So you got to keep it at that. Those people fly at 30,000 feet, and you got to keep them up there, and you got to figure out, I did an exercise early on in my fame where I labeled whose feedback is important to me. Whose feedback do I care about? Now, if you're not in that circle, you're not changing my self-esteem, my attitude, or my mind, honestly. Like, I don't need your feedback, because you don't know me you don't know who I am. You think you do, but you don't. And I really think coaches and athletes and counselors and the people around them need to start doing some work on like how to manage social media as more of a business mindset, and less as a popularity contest. Because I think sometimes athletes are so concerned with how many followers they have that they lose the genuineness of the ones that they have, or they lose the concept of that they'll unfollow them just as fast as they follow them, and it starts to feed into who they think they are. Their self-esteem, is based on a number of followers, and I think it's just really important for them to realize, look, you cannot feed your brain with negative trolls on social media who don't know who you are. Another thing that I started really paying attention to is, look, athletes are in the same boat. Like, we're being vulnerable. We're putting ourselves out there. We're telling our stories publicly, some athletes. We're putting ourselves out there. And for a person with no picture and a fake screen name that doesn't include who they are to be constantly trying to bring me down, you're not even brave enough to put your picture on there.
Right.
So you don't get to comment on my bravery.
Absolutely. And you control that.
Absolutely. And so if I see a person who doesn't have a picture and doesn't have a name and has no personal information on their Twitter feed, and yet they are constantly beating me up, block and delete, because you're not even brave enough to put yourself out there. You don't have the right to comment on my bravery. You don't know what that's like. You've never done it.
And there's the flip side of it too, and that's the athletes who are riding a wave. And studies are showing that they're developing habits of narcissism without even realizing it. They don't even know what narcissism is, but they're feeding off of everything they see and they hear without going to that inner circle. I love the fact that you talked about that inner circle. That wasn't developed by you going through Twitter, picking your favorite names. You know them right here. You can name them in 2 seconds.
Absolutely. And if you're not in that group, then, I'll listen to you. I will listen, and I will think. I can logically think, like, do they have a valid point? Does that make sense? Is this valid information? But it's not going to, I don't take it as seriously as I would take feedback from that inner circle.
Right.
Another thing that I think, I say this in a speech when I'm speaking to student athletes. I was at Towson University walking through campus on the way to a speaking event, and they had stickers on the sidewalks saying, "Walk safely, look up." And as I'm walking, I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Like, why do we have stickers on the sidewalk? And then I just stopped and started looking around, and it was because every college student was walking like this. I mean, as they were walking to class, they're looking down, and they're bumping into things and like falling down and tripping. And I just thought, oh my gosh, like, we have to now have reminders on college campuses for these kids to put their phone down. And, I think, like you said, the narcissistic behavior that we have because we're so into the phone and social media, look, we got to have some discipline on putting it down.
Absolutely.
Like, putting it up. I have myself on a limit. I get to look at social media twice a day. I look at it when I wake up, and I look at it sometime, at night between like 6 and 9. I look at it again. That's it. I don't look at it throughout the day because I get consumed with false information about myself and about everyone else. I have, my daughter has a phone, and there's a way to go in and you can set your screen time to where it will shut off. And
I have 2 daughters. I'm with you.
And I think it would almost be beneficial for athletes to do that for themselves, to go in and set it up for themselves where they're only allowing themselves a certain amount of time on websites or apps or on their phone at all. It's a discipline thing. It's a discipline thing, and it's a mindset thing. And I think it's really important to get a hold of that on the front end, so you don't end up obsessing over it, on the back end.
I will tell you, I found this in the fall and spring, especially as some of the programs I work with, the head coaches are now taking their phones an hour before curfew. And they're using it for 2 reasons. One, obviously the mindset you go to sleep with is what you're going to wake up with. But the other thing is the blue light. And they're like, I want you to sleep healthy.
Right.
You're an athlete. You've got to recover. And I commend those coaches who have the courage to say, curfew is at 10, 9 o'clock, the coaches are going to come around and get your phone. If you have an emergency, there's a phone right there. You call us. Doesn't matter what time it is. We'll be there with your phone.
Yeah. I had a quarterback who played in the SEC, and I was going to one of his games one time, and, they were staying in the hotel the night before. And I was seeing him in the lobby, before they went up for curfew and all that. And he had his phone, and it lit up, and I saw the red, number for text messages, and I was like, what is that? It's 4 digits. And he had gotten 5,000 something text messages in a day because his phone number had been leaked out to the opposing team. And he had gotten 5,000 messages telling him basically that he was terrible and, getting in his head. And when he realized what was happening, he just stopped clicking on it, stopped reading them. But that stuff, you can't unread and unhear things sometimes. And when you're allowing that negative speak in your brain, it plays out on the field. You have one mistake on the field early on in the game, and now you're like, well, maybe they're right. Maybe you're
anticipating failure.
And you're creating it. What you focus on expands. And so it was the first time I ever really realized the extent as to some of these star Power 5 players, like the extent of how far fans will go to get in their head before a game. You've got to be disciplined enough as an athlete to not let that be successful, like to not let that work. But if you're looking at your phone, it's working. They're being successful in manipulating your mindset before a game because you're reading it. You got to be smarter than that.
I want to ask you the question that I bet you would have loved to have answered 1,000 times. I want you to, in this one question, speak to the student athlete and speak to the parent. And the question is, what can I expect going from the high school level to the college level as a student athlete? As a student athlete and as a parent, what can I expect for both sides?
I'll speak to the parents first. Look, I started working in college because I didn't want to deal with parents.
Yeah.
The rest of
how'd that work out for you?
Oh, it worked out for me great because I didn't talk to them. That was a boundary that I had. But, I think for parents, look, the reality is, and I'm a parent, I get it. We want to protect our children. We want to make sure they're safe and that that we want them to be better than we were. The problem is if we don't allow them to navigate it on their own and have some failures of their own, then they're going to drown at some point. Like they're not going to know how to do it. And I saw a lot of athletes whose parents had done everything for them. And the reality of college life is FERPA has now told parents, no, like you can't get this information. And it's hard, I get it, for parents who've always been involved to now all of a sudden send your baby off to some foreign place and you can't get any information. I don't know what I'm going to do when that happens to me. But as an advisor and as a person who was trying to take care of these student athletes, it was such a blessing to not have to deal with the parents because sometimes I'm trying to undo what you've done.
True.
We need the student athlete to learn how to do it on their own. Empowerment. And are they going to do it all the right way, or are they going to do it all the way that you would do it as their parent? No, but it's okay. Like it's okay. And I think for parents to find that person that they know, like, okay, I can rest easy. She's going to take care of him, or he's going to I think that is important for parents to have somebody that they can be like, okay, they'll be okay because she's there, he's there. But then you gotta let them go, and you gotta let them make the mistakes and figure it out on their own. And I don't know how hard that is. I'll find out one day. But I think it's really important role for the parents to play is to just kind of back up and be the support system, but you can't be the helicopter. You can't be the magic wand waver, the Superman anymore. Like, you've got to really allow the student athlete to figure it out. Because if they don't, at some point they're going to crash. Like, at some point they've got to be an adult. And to me, it's better for that to happen in that controlled college environment where there are people around them that can pick them up and help them when they screw up, rather than for the parent to still be controlling it. And then they get out in the adult world and nobody cares. Like, now you're on your own and nobody cares. And you're, I don't know who's going to save you, because the law doesn't care that mama isn't there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And for student athletes, transitioning into the college athlete world, it's no joke, and it's just not. I mean, and I think it's hard work. It takes discipline. You're a dime a dozen at some level, you're a dime a dozen. I do believe this. I believe that it doesn't matter where you came from, how much money you have, what your last name is. I do think college is where it equals out. I think sometimes in high school you get that player whose parents are the biggest booster, and so they play, or you get some of that
coach's kid, stuff
political
like that.
tie-in, and I think in college it levels out a little bit more. And I think that in college you have a real opportunity to overcome what's behind you. You have a real opportunity to start over and wipe the slate clean. I used to, in our first team meeting, every year to every team, I would say, how many of you had a 4.0 in high school? Or how many of you were on the honor roll in high school? And, they would raise their hands. And I would say, that's fantastic. Starting right now, nobody cares.
That's reality.
How many of you made below a 20 on your ACT? And I would get, fantastic. Starting now, nobody cares. You're all starting out on the same playing field from this moment on. So I don't care how smart you were in high school. I don't care how dumb you thought you were in high school. I don't care how good you were in high school talent-wise. I don't care how bad you were in high school talent-wise. Starting today, you're all starting over. Show me who you are.
New chapter. Mm-hmm.
You want to be a 4.0 student? Go get it. Because I think that it's such a great opportunity for everyone to overcome their status, who their parents are or not, and be who they want to be. And I think it's out there for everybody. I think that anybody can be anything they want to be if they're willing to work for it. And I think that first day in college is the day where here's your opportunity. What do you want to be? Who are you going to be? Now go do it. And if you're disciplined enough and have the work ethic to do it, I've seen it happen over and over and over again. You can do it. And every time, it never failed. Every time I would get a transcript or meet a student athlete and coaches would hype them up, they're a Power 5 guy, And I would look at transcript, or I would meet the kid and I would think, there ain't no way. Like, no way. He's a D2 at best. Like, we'll never,
you figured it out.
I would be like, we'll never get it done in the classroom. Is never going to do what you are going to demand of him to do. He'll be D2. And I would go into thinking that, and I would get proven wrong every time. Every time I started to prejudge or look at a number or a statistic that I would think would tell me they couldn't be successful, I would get proven wrong. Because it levels out, and it becomes about how bad do you want it. And if you want it bad enough, you can get it if you're willing to work for it.
But at the same time, that transition, I don't want people to think that everything is incredible. The discipline and the demands of being a student athlete are probably 10 times what you expect them to be. Is that true?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you'll never have that. We're not that disciplined as adults. I'm not that disciplined as an adult. I don't get up at 5 a.m. and go work out. I mean, it's a unique time period in your life where you'll be pushed harder than you have ever been and will ever be again. The schedule, the schedule that you're on, the regiment, what you're doing to your body, you're pushing yourself mentally and physically to the highest level of performance you can go to. And if it clicks with you, you know, and you give in to the process, then I think it's magic. There's a lot of people that think they're smarter than the system or want to buck the system, and it doesn't work out for them. And we see those stories daily, you know, on the ticker of ESPN. But I think if you give in to the process and do what you're supposed to do, and, you know, the other thing that I think that adults have the wisdom is that, look, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity and you don't get this back. Like, there's not 40-year-olds playing college football, you know?
Some do vicariously through their kids, but
right.
Yeah.
But I mean, you don't, this is not one of those things that, like, you get to come back and do over if you're not smart enough or wise enough or mature enough to handle it. I mean, you get 4 years, 5 years, some 6, you know, if you have an injury or something. But I mean, it's a one-shot deal. And you know, the thing I've heard the most probably lately is athletes, older athletes. I get emails constantly from 40-year-olds, 30-year-olds. I wish I had had someone like you when I was in college. My life would have been different. Look, you can't wait on someone else to wave the magic wand. Like, you got to wave it for yourself, you know? I mean, because this is your one shot. And you can't sit back and blame, well, I didn't have a Brittany Wagner. Well, so, like, be your own Brittany Wagner.
That's why I call it a gift. I think every student athlete who is able to play at that next level, that's a gift that they've been given. Handle it with pride and privilege in everything you do. Because you're right. Regret is a controllable emotion. And if you're saying that at 30 and 40, well, point the finger right back at yourself.
Yeah. You know, I think and look, is it a perfect system? Is it a perfect opportunity? No, you know, it's not. But focus on the fact that it's there, and you are one of the 1% of high school athletes that get the opportunity to play at the next level. Like, man, you gotta make the most of that. You do not want to be looking back, wishing you had followed the rules or wishing you had really taken the workout seriously. Like, yes, it's going to be hard. Yes, you're going to want to quit. Yes, you know, but do it. Like, do it anyway for yourself and see what happens. And even if it doesn't happen on the field, those lessons and discipline that you're learning will create other opportunities for things to happen in your life, because you have learned the lessons and you've changed the habits. Things will work out in your favor if you'll trust it. Trust the process.
There's nothing to lose. Absolutely nothing to lose, only to gain.
No, and yeah.
Great advice.
Yeah, and let your ego go. Like, let the ego go.
Ego's the enemy. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because it's not going to get you anywhere. There's enough for everybody. You know, that's a saying that I Michael Strahan, I know, I've heard it say it 100 times, and I have to say it to myself all the time. When I start comparing myself or start letting my ego get involved, I have to sit back and remind myself, like, there's enough for everybody. There's enough touchdowns to be scored for you to score 2 and him to score 2, and the other team may score 2, but you got to, like, there's enough. There's enough for everybody. Let the ego go.
So before we wrap this up, I want to ask you 2 things very special going on in your life. First, I want to learn more, and I know our viewers do, about 10,000 Pencils and how they can get involved.
Yeah, 10,000 Pencils is the company I started when I left the show. So we do several things. It's morphed. I'm a product of my own advice. Fake it till you make it. I had no idea how to run a company or what I was doing. So we started out with one kind of agenda, and we just it keeps changing, you know, daily based on what everybody else wants 10,000 Pencils to be. So I don't know. I know what it is today. Tomorrow, maybe something totally different, and that's okay. But really, I knew Netflix had given me this platform, and I just set out to try to change as many lives as I could all over the place, as long as people would listen. So we've kind of tried to figure out what the best ways possible to do that. One is I do a lot of speaking events, speak at high schools, colleges, to athletes and to student bodies as a whole. So I speak to corporations. I speak to, it's crazy how that's morphed into its own thing, I think, with speaking engagements. But I do a lot of speaking engagements. I love that because I think that's the setting where I am affecting the most people in the shortest amount of time. And I also get to hear stories and reactions back from the people in the audience, which I love. I also go into schools, colleges, junior colleges, and work with counselors, administrators, teachers on how to form those relationships, how to really affect change in their students, really reach the student at that core level based on relationship building. I give them kind of the keys to how I did it and what worked for me. And that's always really fun. I do not think that you have to have money or a software system or, all the things that society would tell you you need to have in order to effectively teach students. I think you've got to have human beings seeing the other person as a human being, and that's free. And so I don't go in with fancy equipment or trying to sell you. I go in and it's me and you, and that's it.
Authenticity.
I look at your school and I meet your students and I meet the teachers and counselors, and then we sit down and talk about how can you effectively change mindset, really is what it is, of your leaders and your teachers and then ultimately your students, to create a successful environment. And I came from the poorest state in our country and the poorest county in the country, in Kemper County in Scuba, Mississippi. So I don't get, when people call and say, well, she won't come to rural, Texas, or, oh yeah, I will.
Yeah.
I live.
I actually know where it is. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, nothing kind of scares me at this point, because I feel like it's the same for, what worked in Scuba will work anywhere. I mean, if it worked in Scuba, heck, I don't know where it wouldn't work. So I've been all over, and I love doing that. I love meeting the students and the teachers and just being in their place and sitting there with them and learning about where they've come from and seeing their town, and it grows me, and I take their stories, and then it's like I take all the stories and I box them all up, and then I take them wherever I go. That's what 10,000 Pencils is today. Who knows what it'll be tomorrow?
We'll talk tomorrow. But see, it's exciting because you get to take 15 years of knowledge in this transition to a role to make a positive impact. And I think there's nothing more genuine than that. I think that's amazing. So I commend you on that transition. And I know for somebody who absolutely loved the show, I would love to hear you speak because of what I saw. I still have so much curiosities as to how you handle it, because nobody ever approached you, and to hear your stories and to hear how you can influence other people to help a student body, help a leadership group within a school, or even a corporation. I think you can listen with empathy and you can answer with authenticity, which has to be an exciting atmosphere to be in.
Yeah, it's fun. And I don't have all the answers. I don't ever pretend to have all the answers, but I'll help you figure it out.
And then tell me about the rumors of you hanging out with Michael Strahan and Courtney Cox. I think there's something pretty exciting on the horizon coming.
There is. So we are working on, Michael Strahan and myself and Courtney Cox are executive producers on a new TV show that will be a scripted series spinoff of Last Chance U about me and my life. So it will not be a scripted Last Chance U. It's going to be a scripted series that'll take my stories starting from day one of my job at East Mississippi. And I came to Scuba from an SEC school. So I was getting off of a charter flight from Madison Square Gardens and walking into my office in Scuba. And I was shocked, to say the least. So the show will start kind of there and work through the 8 years that I was at Scuba before Netflix came on board, and it's going to work through my professional experiences, but also my personal life. And really, we're going to hit some single mom stuff and being a woman in kind of a man's world, and But it is fantastic. I love Strahan and Courtney. I could not have dreamed up a better combination of people. Courtney will be playing me in the show, so she will be Brittany Wagner, which is fantastic. And it's just been a whole lot of fun. Like I said, I'm not Hollywood. I'm just a girl from Mississippi. But to really be able to connect with someone with the influence, that Strahan and Courtney have, and be able to take this even further. I never dreamed that I would be on a Netflix documentary. I sure as hell never dreamed I would have a scripted series written about me. But I think it's just another opportunity to take this to another level. And for all of us, the goal is to impact people's lives. We do not want just some show out there telling a story. We want a show that's telling a story in a way that it will impact people's lives for the better. And so it is super fun to be a part of. And yeah, I pinch myself every day.
I'm a firm believer in karma. So I think this is a reward to you for the investment you made in so many people's lives. There are a lot of people who didn't see Last Chance U. This is going to give them the opportunity, a totally different segment, to see this. And what's going to be funny is now everyone's going to go back and watch Netflix U after the show starts airing to see the real you, which is going to be great. But I'm so excited for you. I think these opportunities you've created for yourself, I admire, and you inspire me because you said it earlier, you were given a platform and you want to make the most of it. And I really think that's what gratitude is all about. I think gratitude is inward out. And too many people think it's outward in, what people give us. And it's so the opposite. And in your case, the reason I had such admiration for you and the reason I got so excited watching you talk with Brett was you were my favorite character on that show. And I loved football. But there was a sense of security in every scene you were in and calmness in a chaotic world. And that's why I'm so excited today. And I sincerely thank you for making the time. It's the most precious gift you have to spend a little bit with us. I'm so excited to see what happens with 10,000 Pencils tomorrow, next Wednesday, the 15th of November, whatever it may be. And for the show, I wish you nothing but the best. And I thank you. I thank you so much, Brittany.
Thank you. Those are kind words. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been fun. And I hope that an athlete, a parent, a coach, somebody, walks away from this and has learned something. And yeah, hang in there, everybody. You can do it. I believe in you. You got this.
Well, there you have it. We could not have had a better guest today. I hope you were able to gain something. Have a great day, and don't forget, my friends, charge up.